The wind howled across the desolate, rocky plains of Gamulus, carrying with it the frail cries of Rhea. Her own people had left her here, a runt deemed too weak to survive, sentenced to death by exposure. The frigid air, imbued with biting dust, clawed at her exposed skin. Her exoskeleton, weakened by a genetic flaw, offered little resistance to the planet's relentless chill. Each gust threatened to steal the last vestiges of warmth from her small body. A whimper escaped her lips, barely audible above the wind's mournful song. She lay curled on the cold stone, her limbs aching, her vision blurring. A thin, threadbare cloth wrap, the only concession her clan had offered, provided scant protection against the elements. It offered no warmth, only a cruel reminder of their indifference. Gamelin societal law is absolute, a chillingly logical voice echoed in her mind, a voice she'd heard repeated countless times by the elders. Runts, those born with physical or genetic defects, are a burden on the clan, consuming resources without contributing to its strength. They are unfit for survival and must be culled to ensure the prosperity of the whole. Hundreds of kilometers above, in a dimly lit command center orbiting Gamulus, Commander Charles Phillips swiveled in his chair, the worn leather creaking beneath him. Boredom etched itself onto his face, a familiar companion during his long, uneventful tour on this remote outpost overlooking Gamelin territory. He tapped a finger against the console, his gaze drifting across the array of flickering monitors. Suddenly, an unusual energy signature bloomed on one of the sensors, a blip of anomalous data originating from the surface of Gamulus, well beyond the outpost's designated patrol zone. Phillips straightened in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "What's that?" he muttered, his voice raspy from too much recycled air and too little sleep. "Unknown energy signature, Commander," a disembodied voice responded from the comm system. "Originating from Sector Gamma 9, surface of Gamulus, beyond authorized patrol parameters." Phillips hesitated for only a moment. Regulations forbade interference in Gamelin affairs, a strict interpretation of the Prime Directive that had kept him chained to this desolate post for far too long. But something about the anomaly tugged at him. "Send a recon drone to investigate," he ordered, his voice betraying a flicker of something that wasn't boredom. The drone, a silent metallic insect, descended through the atmosphere, its cameras transmitting grainy black and white images back to the command center. Phillips leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the main screen. The image determination, revealing a desolate landscape of jagged rocks and swirling dust. And then in the center of the frame, a small, shivering Gamelin child lay exposed on the harsh terrain. Phillips recognized the distinct biological markers immediately. The underdeveloped exoskeleton, the stunted growth patterns. A Gamelin runt. Abandoned according to custom. He knew what that meant. The child was left to die. A flicker of memory, unwelcome and sharp, pierced through Phillips' carefully constructed detachment. A younger, smaller version of himself, abandoned at a human orphanage, unwanted and alone. He pushed the memory back down, but the echo of that long-ago despair resonated within him. He rose abruptly from his chair. "Prep an unmarked transport," he barked, his voice now infused with urgency. "We're going in." The command center erupted in controlled chaos. Technicians scrambled to their stations, their fingers flying across keyboards. Lieutenant Miller, Phillips' second in command, approached him, his face etched with concern. "Commander, with all due respect, what do you think you're doing? We have direct orders to maintain neutrality. Interference in Gamelin affairs is strictly prohibited. This could trigger a diplomatic incident." Phillips turned to face Miller, his eyes hard. "Sometimes, Miller," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "rules are meant to be broken." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his own troubled past, a past littered with broken rules and a deep-seated disdain for injustice. The transport ship, cloaked in darkness, sliced through the Gamelin atmosphere, its hull shimmering with stealth technology. Inside, Charles gripped the edge of his seat, his nucleus tightening. He was about to retrieve the abandoned Gamelin child, unaware of the strategic genius that lay hidden within her frail frame, a genius that would one day reshape the galaxy. Suddenly, a piercing alarm blared through the ship. A red light flashed on the console. "Commander," the pilot's voice crackled over the comm, "we have a problem. Gamelin patrol ship bearing 270 closing fast. They've detected our energy signature." Phillips swore under his breath. He had a choice to make: abort the rescue and return to base, condemning the child to certain death, or risk open conflict with the Gamelins to save her. Hard about Jenkins. Full burn jammed their sensors. Charles barked into the comm, his fist clenched as he squeezed the armrest. Beside him, Sergeant Reyes watched the tactical display, his face grim. "That patrol ship's gaining on us, Commander. They're not buying our transponder code." The transport shuddered as Jenkins, a pilot known for his reckless maneuvers, threw it into a tight turn, the G-forces pressing them into their seats. Alarms blared as the sensor jamming kicked in, painting the patrol ship's sensors with a wall of static. "Hold on to your guts, people," Jenkins yelled over the comm. "This is gonna get bumpy." Minutes stretched into an eternity as the transport twisted and weaved through the asteroid field, the patrol ship hot on their tail. Finally, under the cover of darkness and sensor distortion, Jenkins brought the transport down in a rough landing near Rhea's last known location. The airlock hissed open and Charles, Reyes, and two medics, Davis and Harris, piled out, their weapons raised. The wind howled, carrying with it the sting of ice crystals. "Spread out, find her," Charles ordered, his voice barely audible above the wind. It didn't take long. Davis spotted her first, a small, huddled form lying against a jagged rock. "Commander, over here." Charles rushed to her side. Rhea was barely alive. Her exoskeleton, usually a vibrant emerald green, was now dull and cracked, the brittle plates offering little protection from the elements. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. "Get her back to the transport, now." Back inside the transport, Davis and Harris worked frantically to stabilize Rhea. "Her body temperature is critically low," Davis said, his brow furrowed, "and her exoskeleton is deteriorating. We need to get her into a climate-controlled environment, stat." "Her physiology is different from anything I've ever seen," Harris added, studying the readings on his scanner. "Her internal organs are structured completely differently. Standard human medical protocols won't work." The transport lurched as Jenkins lifted off, heading back to the outpost. The journey was silent, save for the hum of the engines and the rhythmic beeping of Rhea's life support systems. Back at the outpost, Lieutenant Miller met them at the landing bay, his expression a mixture of relief and anger. "Commander, what in God's name were you thinking? You disobeyed a direct order." "I'll explain later, Miller," Charles said, his voice tight. "Right now, we need to get her to the medbay." In the medbay, the medical team, led by Dr. Ramirez, worked tirelessly to stabilize Rhea. They jury-rigged a climate-controlled incubator, adapting human technology to meet her specific needs. It was a delicate dance of improvisation and experimentation, pushing the limits of their knowledge and resources. Hours later, Rhea's eyes fluttered open. She was disoriented, her vision blurry. She saw the faces of the humans peering down at her, their expressions unreadable. Fear flickered in her eyes. She tried to speak, but her voice came out as a weak, raspy whisper in broken, accented Gamelin. Charles stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Easy, easy," he said softly, his voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe now. We're not going to hurt you." He offered her a cup of water and a nutrient paste, but she recoiled, her eyes filled with distrust. "Stay away," she hissed in Gamelin, her voice trembling. But then her gaze fell upon the tactical displays that lined the medbay walls. Her eyes widened, and she stared at the schematics of the outpost's defense systems, her expression shifting from fear to curiosity. Later that day, Charles received a report from intelligence. "Commander, we've identified the Gamelin female you rescued. Her name is Rhea, and she's from a prominent family within Gamelin society. Her father is a high-ranking military official." Charles frowned. Then why was she left to die? Just then, Miller approached, his face grim. "Commander, we've received a high-level communication from the Gamelin government. They're demanding an explanation for your unauthorized incursion into their territory. They want Rhea returned immediately." Charles felt a knot tighten in his stomach. His impulsive decision had just triggered a potential diplomatic crisis. He looked back at the medbay, where Rhea was now studying a holographic display of human fighter tactics, her brow furrowed in concentration. Despite her weakened state, Rhea began to pepper Charles with questions about human military tactics and outpost defense systems. Her questions were insightful, probing, revealing a sharp, strategic mind. "Why do you position your fighters in that formation?" she asked, pointing to a diagram. "Wouldn't it be more effective to use a staggered approach, maximizing your firing range?" One evening, as Charles sat beside her, Rhea spoke, her voice still weak but clearer now. "They left me to die," she said, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and anger. "Not because I was weak, but because of my mind. My family feared I was becoming too powerful." Charles looked at her, seeing a kindred spirit, an outcast like himself. He made a decision. "Miller," he said, his voice firm, "inform the Gamelin government that we have no intention of returning Rhea. We're offering her asylum." Miller stared at him, his mouth agape. "Commander, are you insane? This could mean war." "Maybe," Charles said, his gaze unwavering. "But I'm not going to let them kill her." A cautious but growing connection began to form between Charles and Rhea, facilitated by their shared experiences as outcasts. They spent hours talking, learning about each other's cultures, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Have been a snort. A crimson wedge of Gamelin warship tore into existence above the outpost, its engines flaring like a wound in the night sky. The vessel, a sleek, predatory thing of angles and crimson plating, dwarfed the small human installation. A harsh, modulated voice blared across the comms. "This is Warship Krell. Commander Charles Phillips, you are in violation of Gamelin Code 729B regarding the harboring of genetic defectives. Surrender the Gamelin female, designation Rhea, immediately. Failure to comply will result in the immediate and total destruction of Outpost 14. Charles's heart made. He glanced at Rhea, who stood beside him in the command center, her carapace gleaming faintly in the red emergency lights. "Well," he said, his voice grim but steady, "looks like we've got company." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to all personnel. This is Commander Phillips. We have a situation. The Gamelins want Rhea. We're not giving her up. Prepare for a defensive stand. Weapons hot." The small crew, barely 20 strong, moved with practiced efficiency. They were outgunned, outmanned, and facing a technologically superior foe. But they were also humans, and they had a reputation for being stubborn. "Commander," Rhea said, her voice surprisingly calm, "I may be of assistance. I know Krell's tactical protocols. Their shield harmonics are predictable and their targeting sensors have a blind spot on the lower ventral array." Charles raised an eyebrow. "You know this how?" "I studied tactical strategies before my dismissal," she said, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Gamelin doctrine is rigid. They rarely deviate." Charles grinned. "All right, Rhea, let's see what you've got." He turned to his weapons officer. "Lieutenant, reconfigure the long-range disruptors. Rhea will feed you the frequency modulation, and patch her into the sensor array. Let's see if we can find that blind spot." Hours blurred into a frenzy of activity. The crew, fueled by adrenaline and a healthy dose of defiance, worked tirelessly, rerouting power, recalibrating weapons, and reinforcing defenses. Rhea, her fingers flying across the console, guided them with precise instructions, her knowledge of Gamelin technology proving invaluable. The Krell didn't wait long. A searing beam of crimson energy slammed into the outpost, shaking it violently. The primary energy grid flickered and died, plunging the station into partial darkness. Emergency lights cast long, dancing shadows across the faces of the crew. Shields down to 40%. The weapons officer shouted. They knocked out the main grid. Reroute power to the disruptors. Charles barked. Rhea, what's our best shot? They expect us to cower, Rhea said, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. They will assume we are crippled. I propose a feigned surrender. Lure them closer into disruptor range. Then a concentrated volley on their ventral array. It's a gamble, but it's our only chance. Charles considered the plan. It was audacious, bordering on suicidal, but he trusted Rhea. All right, he said. Let's give them a show. He turned to the comms officer. Transmit a message to the Krell. Tell them we surrender. We'll hand over the defective gamelin. As the message went out, the crew worked feverishly, preparing the ambush. The disruptors, now powered by the station's emergency reserves, hummed with barely held-back energy. The Krell responded almost immediately. Prepare to receive a boarding party, the gamelin captain's voice crackled over the comms. The female will be delivered to the forward airlock. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. As the warship maneuvered closer, Charles held his breath. Now, Rhea, he murmured. Now, Rhea unleashed the disruptors. 3 bolts of raw energy lanced out, striking the Krell's ventral array with pinpoint accuracy. The gamelin warship shuddered violently, its shields collapsing. Direct hit, the weapons officer yelled. Their shields are down, weapons systems offline. But the gamelin captain was not so easily defeated. Boarding party, prepare to launch. His voice roared. Seize the defective and destroy the outpost from within. A dozen gamelin warriors, clad in crimson armor, stormed through the breached hull of the outpost. They moved with ruthless efficiency, their energy rifles spitting bolts of plasma. Charles and his team met them head-on. The corridors of the outpost became a chaotic battleground, filled with the roar of weapons fire and the screams of the wounded. Charles, wielding a pulse rifle, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He knew the outpost like the back of his hand, using its narrow corridors and blind corners to his advantage. Even from the command center, Rhea directed the defense, her voice calm and clear amidst the chaos. Section 3 is compromised, she said. They are flanking you. Fall back to the armory. Use the grenade launcher on the east wall. Following Rhea's instructions, Charles and his team managed to repel the gamelin advance, inflicting heavy casualties. The remaining gamelin warriors retreated, regrouping in the breached section of the hull. They're regrouping, the weapons officer shouted. What do we do now, Commander? Charles, his face streaked with sweat and grime, looked at Rhea. What do you say, Rhea? Do we finish this? Rhea hesitated for a moment. No, she said. We offer them a truce. Charles raised an eyebrow. A truce. After all this, they are warriors, Rhea said. They will respect strength. We have shown them that we are not weak. Offer them a chance to negotiate. Tell them about the encroaching threat. Charles nodded slowly. He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. Open a channel to the Krell, he said. This is Commander Phillips. We propose a ceasefire. We wish to discuss a matter of mutual concern. To his surprise, the gamelin captain agreed. Very well, his voice said. I will meet with you, but be warned, Commander. Any treachery will be met with swift and merciless retribution. A tense hour later, Charles and Rhea stood facing the gamelin captain in the outpost's makeshift conference room. The captain, a hulking figure with cold, reptilian eyes, regarded them with suspicion. State your business, Commander, the captain said, his voice like gravel. There is a threat looming, Charles said. A threat that concerns both our peoples. A neighboring alien race is preparing to invade this region. The captain scoffed. Preposterous. We have detected no such activity. They are using secret shipping lanes unknown to your sensors, Rhea said, her voice steady. I know these lanes. The captain's eyes narrowed. How would you, a defective, know such things? I studied military strategy. I analyzed countless shipping manifests. I know their patterns. The captain remained skeptical. Prove it, he said. Give me proof of this impending invasion. And prove your loyalty. Why should I trust a runt who betrayed her own people? Because, Charles said, his voice firm, cutting through the captain's doubt, she's the only one who knows those shipping lanes well enough to get us close. And right now, close is all we have. He glanced at Rhea, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded, her chitinous face resolute. The small, cloaked scout ship, barely larger than a fighter, shuddered as it engaged its stealth systems. Rhea, seated at the navigation console, her slender fingers dancing across the controls, guided them into the asteroid field. It was a chaotic ballet of rock and shadow. Asteroids, some the size of small moons, tumbled and spun, their surfaces scarred by millennia of cosmic impacts. The ship lurched violently as Rhea executed a series of hairpin turns, threading the needle through gaps barely wider than the ship itself. Alarms blared intermittently, warning of near misses. The Gamelin captain, strapped into his command chair, gripped the chairs, his mandibles twitching. "Are you certain of this course, Rhea?" he growled, his voice tight with barely suppressed anxiety. "Affirmative, Captain," Rhea replied, her voice calm and steady. "These pathways are not charted, they are felt." As they navigated deeper into the uncharted sector, a low hum filled the scout ship, a subtle vibration that resonated in their bones. "Captain, I'm picking up an unusual energy signature," the sensor operator announced, his voice filled with concern. Originating from a remote, uncharted sector. Rhea's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Bring it up on the main display." The energy signature pulsed on the screen, an erratic, almost violent display of colors unlike anything Charles had ever seen. "That is not Gamelin," Rhea said, her voice hushed with a mixture of awe and dread. "Nor human. That is advanced. Alien. A scouting vessel, I believe. They are testing the waters for an invasion." The Gamelin captain remained unconvinced. "Impossible. We would have detected them long ago. Show me visual confirmation." Charles knew they were playing a dangerous game, but he trusted Rhea's instincts. "Prepare for intercept," he ordered. "Helm, bring us within visual range of the energy source, but stay cloaked." "Sir, that's suicide," the pilot protested. "If they detect us, then we're all dead," Charles finished, his gaze unwavering. "But if we don't confirm this, billions could die. Do it." The scout ship crept forward, its engines straining as it pushed against the gravitational pull of a nearby planetoid. As they approached the source of the energy signature, a shape materialized on the forward scanners, a sleek, obsidian vessel unlike anything they had ever encountered. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent energy field, and its weapon emplacements glowed with menacing light. "By the ancestors," the Gamelin captain breathed, his skepticism finally crumbling. "It is as you said. Too late." A piercing alarm shrieked through the scout ship. "We've been detected," the sensor operator yelled. "They're firing." A volley of energy bolts slammed into the scout ship, the shields flickering violently. The ship bucked and shuddered as the alien vessel's weapons found their mark. "Cloaking device compromised," the pilot shouted. "Communications array offline. Evasive maneuvers." Charles barked. "Helm, take us into that nebula, now." The pilot obeyed, sending the scout ship hurtling towards a swirling mass of gas and dust. The nebula was a chaotic maelstrom of colors, a kaleidoscope of purple, green, and gold. Visibility dropped to near zero as they plunged into its depths. The alien vessel, relentless in its pursuit, followed close behind. Suddenly, another alarm blared. "Navigation system malfunction," the pilot cried. "We've lost our bearings, we're stranded." Charles swore under his breath. Stranded in the nebula with a hostile alien vessel on their tail and no way to call for help. He looked at Rhea, her face illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. "Can you fix it?" "I can try," Rhea said, her voice determined. "But I will need time and resources." Charles surveyed the damage, his mind racing. "All right," he said, his voice regaining its usual confidence. "Let's get to work. What do you need?" As Rhea began diagnosing the problem, Charles turned to the crew. "All right, people, listen up. Our comms are down, our cloak is failing, and our navigation is shot, but we're not dead yet. We're going to fix this, and then we're going to send those bastards a message they won't soon forget." He grabbed a damaged panel, ripping off a section of wiring. "Lopez, get me some of that sealant from engineering. We're going to need to improvise." Hours blurred into a frantic dance of sparks, sweat, and muttered curses. Rhea, her slender fingers moving with surprising dexterity, worked to reroute the damaged circuits. Charles, using a combination of human ingenuity and gamelan technology, fashioned a makeshift replacement part from salvaged components. The gamelan captain, initially hesitant, found himself assisting, his respect for Rhea and Charles growing with each passing moment. Finally, Rhea straightened up, wiping a smear of grease from her face. "I have a solution," she announced. "The nebula, its unique properties can mask our energy signature. We can use it to our advantage. We can set a trap." Charles grinned. "I'm listening." Rhea explained her plan, a complex and audacious strategy that relied on exploiting the nebula's electromagnetic fields to create a false energy signature, luring the alien vessel into a carefully orchestrated ambush. Charles listened intently, making mental adjustments, adding his own tactical flourishes. With the navigation system still only partially functional, Charles implemented Rhea's plan, guiding the scout ship through the swirling currents of the nebula, setting the trap. Tension hung thick in the air as they waited, the only sound the hum of the ship's engines and the frantic tapping of Rhea's fingers on the console. Then, a blip appeared on the scanner. "They're taking the bait," the sensor operator whispered. "They're heading right for us." Charles gripped the controls, his heart pounding in his chest. "Prepare to attack," he ordered. "Rhea, you're up." As the alien vessel entered the kill zone, Rhea unleashed a barrage of energy pulses, disrupting its shields and targeting its weapon systems. The scout ship, its cloaking device temporarily reactivated, launched a surprise attack, crippling the alien vessel's primary weapons. The gamelan captain stared at the display, his mandibles agape. "Incredible," he murmured. She actually did it." He turned to Rhea, his eyes filled with grudging respect. "You have proven your worth, Rhea. I was wrong about you." But their victory was short-lived. The alien vessel, though crippled, managed to transmit a distress signal before its systems completely failed. "They've alerted the main invasion force," the sensor operator announced, his voice grim. "They're coming." With the immediate threat neutralized, Charles and his team worked feverishly to repair the navigation system. Finally, with a sigh of relief, Rhea announced, "Navigation is back online. We can escape the nebula." As they emerged from the swirling clouds of gas and dust, a message crackled over the comms, a desperate plea from the gamelan homeworld. "We are under attack," the voice cried. "The alien invaders. They are overwhelming our defenses. We need your help. Please, you are our only hope." The gamelan captain, his face etched with worry, turned to Charles. "My homeworld. It is in dire need. I implore you, Commander Phillips, we need your help and Rhea's." Charles looked at Rhea, her eyes shining with perseverance. He knew this was just the beginning. The true war was about to begin. He met the captain's gaze, his eyebrows furrowed. "Then let's go give them hell." With Rhea at our side, and into the very maw of the storm, the sleek gamelan cruiser, escorted by a squadron of fighters, pierced the orbital defense grid, each pulse cannon blast a desperate attempt to hold back the tide. As they descended through the smoke-choked atmosphere, the scale of the chaos became horrifyingly clear. Fires raged across the landscape, turning cities into skeletal silhouettes against the crimson sky. Ships, both gamelan and alien, spiraled downwards, leaving fiery trails in their wake. "By the great exoskeleton," Captain Vorak breathed, his mandibles twitching in distress. "They are already upon us." Rhea, strapped into her acceleration couch, stared out the viewport, her amber eyes wide with a mixture of fear and unwavering willpower. "They were faster than anticipated," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. The cruiser shuddered violently as it landed within the heavily fortified citadel, the seat of the Gamelin High Council. They were met by a scene of near pandemonium. Gamelin officials rushed about, their voices a cacophony of panicked orders and desperate pleas. The air crackled with tension, thick with the smell of ozone and burning plasteel. Inside the council chamber, holographic displays flickered with grim reports from the front lines. The 10 members of the High Council, each representing a major Gamelin clan, were locked in a heated debate. Their chitinous carapaces gleamed under the harsh lighting, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the flickering images of destruction. "We must evacuate the planet," Councillor Vorkarian roared, his voice amplified by a vocal modulator. "Our defenses are crumbling. We cannot hope to withstand this onslaught." "Evacuate," Councillor Lyra countered, her voice sharp and infused with scorn. "And abandon our ancestral home to these scavengers? Never." Charles, standing slightly behind Rhea, observed the scene with a practiced eye. The room was a powder keg of fear and indecision, ripe for explosion. He leaned closer to Rhea. "Now's your chance," he murmured. "Show them what you've got." Rhea took a deep breath, her small frame straightening with newfound willpower. "Honored councillors," she began, her voice surprisingly clear and steady, cutting through the clamor. "I have a plan." A hush fell over the chamber as all eyes turned towards the runt standing before them. Councillor Vorkarian scoffed. "A plan? From one who was deemed unfit to serve? Preposterous." "Silence, Vorkarian," Captain Vorek interjected, his voice resonating with authority. "Let her speak. She has earned that much." Rhea activated a holographic projector, displaying a detailed map of the Gamelin home world and the projected attack routes of the alien invaders. "They will focus their initial assault on our primary energy generators," she explained, her voice gaining confidence. "Crippling those will plunge our cities into darkness and disrupt our defense systems. However, their reliance on predictable attack vectors leaves them vulnerable." She pointed to a series of narrow canyons and mountain passes. "By establishing layered defensive positions within these choke points, we can funnel their forces into kill zones, maximizing our firepower and minimizing our losses." Charles stepped forward, adding his own expertise to Rhea's plan. "We can adapt human defensive tactics to complement Rhea's strategy. A layered defense system, combining Gamelin energy shields with human-engineered railgun emplacements, will create a gauntlet that even their advanced weaponry will struggle to penetrate." Skepticism still clouded the faces of some councillors, but Captain Vorak stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. "I have seen what these two are capable of. They have proven their loyalty and their ingenuity. I vouch for them with my life. Give them command, and I swear to you they will defend our home world." After a tense silence, Councillor Lyra nodded. "Very well," she conceded. "We will grant them command of the 7th Fleet, stationed in the western sector. But if they fail—" "We will not fail," Rhea declared, her voice ringing with conviction. In the days that followed, Charles and Rhea worked tirelessly to prepare the Gamelin defenses. Charles, with his encyclopedic knowledge of engineering, oversaw the construction of the layered defense system, integrating human technology with Gamelin energy shields and plasma cannons. He barked orders at the Gamelin engineers, his gruff exterior masking a deep respect for their ingenuity. Rhea, meanwhile, drilled the Gamelin soldiers in new tactics, teaching them how to utilize cover, coordinate their attacks, and exploit the weaknesses in the alien invaders' formations. The Gamelin soldiers, initially resistant to the unconventional methods of the Runt, gradually began to respect her strategic acumen and her unwavering perseverance. Then, the storm broke. The first wave of alien invaders arrived, a swarm of insectoid ships that blotted out the sun. They unleashed a barrage of energy blasts that ripped through the Gamelan defenses, vaporizing entire platoons and shattering energy shields with ease. The Gamelan fleet, caught off guard by the sheer ferocity of the attack, suffered heavy losses. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their wreckage tumbling towards the surface. Panic spread through the ranks, threatening to turn the disciplined Gamelan soldiers into a disorganized mob. Shields failing, hull breach on decks 4 through 7. A frantic voice crackled over the comms. "Hold the line," Rhea barked, her voice amplified across the battlefield. "Remember your training, focus your fire." Charles, monitoring the battle from the command center, saw the tide turning against them. "They're adapting faster than we anticipated," he muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "We need to adjust our strategy now." He barked orders into the comms, directing the remaining Gamelan fighters to lure the alien invaders into the canyon kill zones. At the same time, he rerouted power from the damaged energy shields to the railgun emplacements, increasing their firepower. Using human engineering skills, Charles began repurposing captured alien technology, stripping down enemy fighters, and integrating their weapons systems into the Gamelan defenses. The results were crude but effective, adding a much-needed punch to their depleted arsenal. As the battle raged, Rhea devised a daring counterattack. "We need to strike at the heart of their command structure," she declared, her eyes gleaming with intensity. "If we can disable their flagship, we can disrupt their formations and buy ourselves some time." She selected a small, elite team of Gamelan warriors, hand-picked for their skill and courage. "You will infiltrate their flagship," she instructed them. "Your mission is to disable their command systems. Do you understand?" "Yes, Commander," the warriors replied in unison, their voices filled with stubborn persistence. "I'm going with them," Charles announced, his voice leaving no room for argument. "They'll need someone who knows how to disable alien tech." Rhea hesitated, her eyes filled with concern. "It's too dangerous, Charles." "We don't have a choice," Charles replied, his gaze unwavering. "Besides, someone needs to keep these chitin heads from getting lost." Under the cover of darkness, Charles and his team infiltrated the alien flagship, a massive bio-organic vessel that pulsed with an eerie, internal light. The interior was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and pulsating chambers, guarded by grotesque alien sentinels. Charles, using his knowledge of alien technology, guided the team through the labyrinth, disabling security systems and avoiding detection. After what seemed like an eternity, they reached the command center, a vast chamber filled with alien consoles and pulsating energy conduits. A fierce firefight erupted, the air filled with the shriek of energy weapons and the guttural cries of the alien sentinels. Charles, wielding a repurposed alien plasma rifle, fought alongside the Gamelan warriors, his movements fluid and deadly. Finally, after a desperate struggle, they reached the main command console. Charles, ignoring the searing pain from a plasma burn on his arm, worked feverishly to disable the flagship's command systems. With a final surge of energy, he severed the connection, plunging the flagship into chaos. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the alien sentinels began to panic. The Gamelan fleet, seeing the flagship disabled, rallied, launching a coordinated counterattack that pushed back the alien invaders. For the first time in days, hope flickered in the hearts of the Gamelan people. But their respite was short-lived. As the battered Gamelan fleet celebrated their victory, a second, even larger wave of alien invaders emerged from hyperspace, an endless swarm of ships that dwarfed even the first wave. The Gamelan defenses, already weakened by the initial assault, crumbled before the onslaught. Cities were reduced to rubble, energy shields shattered, and the Gamelan fleet was scattered and decimated. The High Council, seeing the imminent destruction of their home world, prepared to evacuate the planet, abandoning their people to their fate. Despair settled over the Gamelin homeworld, a suffocating blanket of hopelessness. But Rhea, standing on the command center balcony, refused to give up. She looked out at the burning cities, the shattered defenses, and the faces of her people, etched with fear and despair. "We will not surrender," she declared, her voice ringing with defiance. "We will fight to the very end. We will show them that the spirit of the Gamelins cannot be broken." Charles, standing beside her, felt a surge of admiration for the Runt who had become his commander, his friend, his inspiration. He knew that the odds were stacked against them, that their chances of survival were slim. But he also knew that Rhea was right. They could not give up. Not now. Not ever. A grim smile spread across his face. "I think I have a plan," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "It's crazy, it's desperate, and it's probably suicidal, but it just might work." Charles stared at the schematic, a chaotic jumble of alien symbols and familiar human engineering principles. "All right, people, listen up," he barked, his voice raspy from days without rest. "This is it. We overload their primary energy source, we cripple their fleet. High risk, high reward." He pointed to a flickering console. "Rhea's team draws their fire. We slip in under the radar using the modified Gamelin fighter. Get in, overload the core, get out. Any questions?" He already knew the answer. They whined going in. On the bridge of the Gamelin flagship Indomitable, Rhea watched the sensor readings with narrowed eyes. The alien invaders were responding exactly as she predicted. "All ships, execute diversionary maneuver Delta 7, she commanded, her voice calm despite the storm of incoming fire. "Draw their attention. Make them believe we are their primary target." The bridge shuddered as a volley of energy blasts impacted the shields. She gripped the arms of her command chair, her exoskeleton groaning under the strain. This was it. Inside the alien command ship, chaos reigned. Energy blasts ripped through corridors, and the air crackled with the stench of burning metal. Charles, leading the charge, smacked his fist into an alien console, silencing its screeching alarm. "Damn it, they're expecting us." The team pressed on, plasma rifles blazing, but the invaders were relentless. One by one, Charles's team fell, their sacrifices buying them precious meters. "Shields failing, Captain." A frantic voice crackled over Charles's comm. "We're taking heavy damage." He ignored it, his focus narrowed to the energy core looming ahead. But then the Gamelin ship bucked violently, alarms blaring. "Critical system failure, we can't reach the core." Charles swore, his mind racing. He spotted a junction box sparking erratically. An idea, insane but potentially viable, sparked in his mind. He ripped a panel off the wall, exposing a tangle of wires. "Davies, get over here. I need you to reroute power from the auxiliary generators to the core overload mechanism. Now." He barked instructions, weaving human engineering principles with the alien technology. Sparks flew, the air filled with ozone, and for a moment Charles thought they were done for. Then, with a shudder, the system stabilized. On the Indomitable, the shields were collapsing. "We can't hold much longer, Commander." Her first officer screamed. Rhea knew it. Her fleet was on the verge of being overwhelmed. She clenched her fist. "All ships, prepare for tactical jump. We will expose our flanks to draw their fire. It is the only way." It was a suicidal gamble, but it might buy Charles the time he needed. Inside the alien command ship, Charles watched the energy core pulse with ominous light. "Overload sequence initiated," Davies reported, his voice strained. "Stand back." Charles punched the final override, and the core erupted in a blinding flash of energy. A chain reaction ripped through the ship, cascading outward, consuming everything in its path. The alien invaders' flagship, the heart of their fleet, was gone. The destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. On the Indomitable, Rhea watched as the remaining ships faltered, their coordinated attack dissolving into chaos. "All ships, prepare for counter-offensive," she commanded, her voice ringing with renewed confidence. "For Gamelin." The Gamelin fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing, driving the remaining invaders from their space. Back on the bridge of the Indomitable, now scarred and battered, Charles stared out at the retreating enemy ships. Victory. But at what cost? He saw the faces of the fallen in his mind's eye, their sacrifices etched into his soul. Was he worthy of this victory? Had he done enough? Rhea approached him, her footsteps echoing in the silent bridge. "Charles," she said softly, "you question your worthiness." He turned to face her, his eyes filled with doubt. "I knew of your past, Charles. The battle where your advice was ignored, the lives lost. I knew of the burden you carried." She placed a hand on his arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. "But it was that experience, that empathy, that made you see what others could not. Your unorthodox thinking, your willingness to break the rules saved us all." Days later, the Gamelin High Council convened, their faces etched with solemnity. "Commander Rhea," the High Counselor intoned, "your leadership in the face of overwhelming odds has saved our people. And Commander Charles Phillips, your strategic acumen and bravery have earned our eternal gratitude." They offered them both positions of authority in the newly formed Gamelin-Human alliance. Charles accepted, his heart filled with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. "We have a lot of work to do," he said to Rhea, his voice filled with purpose. "We need to rebuild, to strengthen our defenses, to ensure that this never happens again." Together, they oversaw the rebuilding efforts, integrating human and Gamelin technologies, creating new strategies to defend against future invasions. They built a stronger, more resilient future for both species. One evening, as they reviewed the latest defense plans, Rhea turned to Charles, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Why did you trust me, Charles, a runt, an outcast?" He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Because I saw something in you, Rhea, something special. And because," he paused, "I know what it's like to have your advice ignored, to watch people die because no one listened. I wasn't going to make that mistake again." His past trauma, the betrayal that had haunted him for so long, began to fade, replaced by the warmth of Rhea's trust and the knowledge that he had finally made a difference. Years later, Charles and Rhea stood side by side, overlooking the bustling shipyards of a joint Gamelin-Human space station. Ships of both species, sleek and powerful, moved in perfect harmony, symbols of their enduring alliance. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of ozone and the promise of a brighter future, a future forged in the fires of war and tempered by the bonds of empathy and shared purpose. Their bond, strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect,